President Biden will be primarily focusing on commemorating, of course, this historic event and reinforcing the importance of transatlantic alliances. But what is really the meaning behind this particular diplomatic visit? Well, we're about to find out.
And now I'd like to welcome to the program Joshua Burgin from the Warsaw Security Forum. Hello, how are you doing this morning?
Good morning. Thank you.
Now, we're awaiting President Biden to touch down. This is actually his first state visit to France since he's become president. How is that even possible?
Good question, but there's no question that there are high stakes for the president as he's coming to Europe in a high-profile visit that includes both the D-Day celebration, 80 years since that momentous event, and then on to a G7 event where clearly, presidents of the United States use foreign policy as not just important for international affairs, but it's also visually for their campaign perspectives. And clearly, he's in a contest coming this fall.
Now, President Joe Biden, at least, is considered by many as the leader of the so-called West. Now, President Emmanuel Macron is trying to portray himself as the leader of now Europe or European Union. So how might this state visit influence the US-French relations, particularly in terms of course, economic and defense cooperation, to your mind?
Well, there's a whole range of issues that need to be covered right now. Ukraine is top of that agenda, as is China. The notion that France is attempting to position itself as leader of Europe, certainly on the military front, is not new. I'm sure there will be both direct conversations and indirect sort of between the lines reading around France's efforts for, let's say, in the past, strategic autonomy, a big conversation point in contrast to NATO. Yet NATO is probably the key question around defense, security, Ukraine, again, not to mention China policy over the coming few days and then in the next few months as well.
Certainly. Now, we're going to hear speeches from different leaders at these D-Day commemorations. I think it would be, I know you don't have a crystal ball, but I think it would be fair to say that Joe Biden is going to probably formulate his speech around the NATO alliance, about the trying times that we're facing in light of Russian aggression in Ukraine, and the potential threat that Russia poses to the NATO alliance and to Europe as a whole. How is that in juxtaposition, or how is that different than what we saw from President Trump during the 75th anniversary commemorations when he was president?
Well, there's no question that Biden's going to have multiple audiences. And as I was considering this conversation this morning, I was thinking about what would the trader be thinking about? Who are the audiences? There's an international audience, a NATO audience, a foreign leaders audience, and there's efforts to sort of shore up that relationship, shore up the confidence around issues they need to address, the alliance, the team. The second audience, of course, is a U.S. audience, an audience that's very much looking towards November, already hearing the contours of political campaign, and the notion that Joe Biden wants to project himself as a medal to continue to lead. And then I think a third audience for this speech, of course, is going to be Russia, the Kremlin, and certainly East Asia as well. So as you're writing that, as you're calibrating that, you're thinking of each of these audiences, the lines to deliver, and how to message each of those groups. And I think it remains to be seen how the president will deliver, but I'm looking forward to watching the speech as well, and I'm confident that we'll see each of those contours, each of those groupings being sort of referenced as he communicates that message later.
Now, concerning China, since Xi Jinping was just in France having quite a meeting with Macron, will Biden signal this opposition to China and its influence in Europe in maybe one of these speeches, or do you think that's going to be taken up directly with President Macron?
Well, it's noteworthy that President Macron and President Xi have spent a lot of time together in the past couple of years, with Macron famously going to China, about a year ago, and now Xi Jinping coming to France. I don't think that the president is going to very publicly address those concerns, those questions around China. Will there perhaps be some subtle digs, some subtle comments that sort of reference concerns around democracy, which has been a signature issue for the president? It's worth noting that the 35th anniversary of Tiananmen Square has just taken place in the past few days. Wouldn't surprise me if there's some reference there. And again, a more overarching commitment to democracy where Biden has put a good deal of effort on the public state on that past. So a little bit comes on that front. But I have real doubts that the president will take a very open swipe at Macron or France for the relationship with China.
So we discussed China, and you also touched upon Ukraine. Now, I wonder what specific measures, and I believe that is a key word here, specific support measures for Ukraine are expected to be discussed now between Joe Biden and other European leaders, because as of now, at least, there is much talk, but many experts say that we do not see any tangible solutions on the table.
Well, there's certainly the question of arms shipments and arms delivery to Ukraine. As we've seen in the past few days, there's discussions on the part of NATO, or certainly plans that have sort of come out in media headlines of how NATO will move troops to the front lines should the war escalate. I'm assuming by escalation they mean touching on an Article 5 covered country, a NATO member country. But there's certainly some areas around sanctions that could also come up. The notion that the United States could sanction even further Russian oil and energy products, making it virtually impossible for European states to purchase those without risk of those sanctions touching on them as well. Germany, as you can imagine, is concerned about this, as they still rely on Russian oil and energy to run their economy. These topics probably will come up. I suspect there's no resolution in the short term, but I would imagine that at least on the sidebars, questions of how do we leverage even more pressure against Russia will come up over the next few days.
Okay, well, Joshua Burgin from the Warsaw Security Forum, thank you very much for your insight this morning. We appreciate it, and we'll see you again soon.
I appreciate you having me, and I miss being in the studio.